Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight, we invite you to descend into darkness with a chilling anthology of horror stories. This is episode 39. Let the nightmare begin. Curtain call for silence. When I think back on my life so far, I find that one of the things I can't stop thinking about, no matter how hard I try, is MystikShow. Right off the bat, I should say that I have no answers here. What I'm about to tell you is a true story, and all I can say is what I know. And in the end, I never did find out much about what was going on here or what exactly I'd stumbled upon. There are maybe people out there who can tell you more than I can. But this, right here, is the story of my experience, told as best as I can remember it. I first found out about MystikShow thanks to a friend of mine. Clara was one of those people who could spend literally hours on YouTube. Not even looking for or at anything in particular, just browsing through whatever random clips caught her eye and seemed funny or interesting to her. From what she told me, she'd been trying to find a clip of that scene from The Dark Knight with the Joker and the pencil when she first found this channel. The user's name was MystikShow, and there was only one video on their account. One that was simply titled, "Do you want to see a MystikShow?" Clara had been curious, and she clicked on it. This is a description of the video that she showed me later that day when she came around to my house. The video starts with about 6 seconds or so of lousy quality footage of a man, naked apart from a pair of boxers, sat on a wooden chair. He's in a red room, and when I say that this room is red, I mean the walls, the floor, and what can be seen of the ceiling are all the same shade of red. He just sits there, doing not much at all, and then the screen cuts to black. The words, "Do you want to see a MystikShow?" flash up on the screen. Footage of a dog sitting beside the now empty wooden chair appears here, panting heavily. The dog looks to be a pit bull or something like that. The screen cuts to black again, and the word abracadabra appears against the black background. When it cuts back to the room, the man's body is still sat in the chair. His head and hands have been cut off. Where his hands are, there are now the dog's paws. And the dog's head has been attached to his neck crudely. This is where the video ends. I had no idea what to make of this. I didn't know if I'd just seen an art student's lousy film project or if Clara had just shown me a snuff film. I asked her where the hell she'd found this, and she told me about how she'd stumbled across it. I told her she should get in touch with YouTube and tell them to take that shit down or at least look into it. The shot of that stitched together corpse had looked far too real. I tried to put it out of my mind and didn't think much about it until a few weeks later. Clara told me that MystikShow was back and explained that the account had been taken down a couple of days after she'd shown me that video. But here they were, back with a new account and a new video posted on it. I can't say I had any desire to watch it, but Clara promised me that this one wasn't gory in the least. I reluctantly agreed to check this one out, and so I sat down to check out what MystikShow had posted this time. The video was called "Now You See Him." It was footage that looked like it had been filmed on a pretty cheap handheld camera. The cameraman or woman was never in shot and seemed to be focused on a man walking down a crowded street. The man wasn't anything special, just some blonde guy in a t-shirt and jeans. The person behind the camera followed them along, sticking pretty close behind them. The footage went on like this for about a minute, and I started to get bored. Was this just something some stalker had posted? When it was nearly at the 2-minute mark, the screen went to black, and the words, "Now You See Him," appeared before cutting back to footage of the guy in the t-shirt being filmed walking down a long alleyway, and then simply not being there anymore. He didn't fall or dart off to the side, and there were no flashy special effects. 1 minute he was there in front of the camera, and the next he was simply gone. I hate to use a cliche, but the phrase "vanished in a thin air" is the only way I can think of to describe what I saw. The person holding the camera swung it side to side and up and down to show that the man was nowhere to be found. The screen cut to black once more, and the words, "Now You Don't," appeared, and that was it. I told Clara that it was just done with some kind of technical wizardry. They'd taken the guy out after filming, something any teenager with a decent knowledge of computers and video editing software could probably pull off. In a way, I was relieved. This wasn't some sicko posting snuff movies. It was just some bored guy somewhere uploading weird stuff on the internet to creep people out. Clara seemed almost disappointed when I told her how easy it was to throw something like this together. I think she genuinely wanted it to be real, to have found something sinister. So it probably shouldn't have surprised me a month later when she demanded I come and see what she and her girlfriend had found. I found out that once again, MystikShow had been taken off YouTube, and once again, they'd popped back up. I told her that I really wasn't interested in looking at another stupid video, but she and her girlfriend Lena insisted that I had to see this, that it was the most messed up thing they'd ever seen. That didn't exactly win me over, but I didn't want to argue with them over nothing, so I agreed to give this thing a look. This new video was called Presto Changeo, and right from the start it was different than the previous two. It began with footage of what looked like a theater stage, and there was a woman stood in the middle of it. She was dressed in a black tuxedo, with a featureless white latex mask over her face and white gloves. Text appeared on the screen. It's funny how I can remember it so clearly. It read, "What a great crowd we have here tonight. Now, for my next trick, I will require a lovely volunteer from our audience." The woman pointed at an empty seat in the front row of this theater. "Would this lovely young creature please take to the stage?" In an instant, there was a woman sat in the chair beside the woman in the white mask. She was dressed up like a magician's glamorous assistant. A sparkly red and black number with fishnets and makeup plastered on her face. The makeup was applied far too thickly, and her mascara was running. She was tied to the chair, and despite there being no sound, it was clear that she was sobbing. The words, "Let's give her a hand, folks," appeared. The screen flickered, and suddenly the scene was of the girl in one of those boxes you see in that trick where the magician cuts his or her assistant in half. I didn't like where this was going. As the woman in the white mask watched on, a buzz saw began to descend from above. The box was shaking violently, and the girl in the box's head was jerking side to side, making it clear that she was struggling quite violently. As I watched, the saw blade came down and began slowly cutting into the box as it shook more and more violently, as the camera zoomed in closer and closer to the girl's face. In the end, the screen was dominated by a close-up of the girl's eyes. The screen cut to black, and the words Presto Changeo appeared. It cut back to a shot of a series of boxes. Each box had a painting of a human limb on it. One box had an arm painted on top of it. Another box had a hand, a foot, a leg. The word alakazam was displayed. And the next shot was of the girl's body. It had been cut to pieces and reassembled, with no real surgical skill from the looks of it. Her head was now sewn to the end of one leg, while one of her feet now was attached to her wrist. An arm had been attached to her neck stump, while in place of her left arm, there was now a leg. The body was on screen for perhaps 10 seconds, and then the screen briefly cut to black. When the picture returned, the stage was empty save for the woman in the white mask. From somewhere, there was the sound of applause or a recording of applause, and she took a bow. The video ended. I felt physically sick. But it turned out that the video hadn't been all that Clara and Lena had wanted me to see. This video was different from the previous two in another way. This video had a link in the video description, and like an idiot, Clara had actually clicked on it. But it didn't lead to anything dodgy or to a site infested with viruses. In fact, what it led to was neither disturbing nor dangerous, but just baffling. It was a website that looked like little work had gone into putting it together. It was a black background with a childlike drawing of a frowning face, like the kind of thing that a kid in kindergarten would draw. And beneath it were written the words, Silent Frame Studios. And beneath that, in smaller text, for a worthy crowd. And the rest of the text on the webpage was all in what looked like Japanese. The only other words in English were, donate, our titles, auditions. Clara had apparently had no luck clicking the buttons for donate or our titles, but when she'd pressed the auditions button, it had led her to another webpage. This one was just an address for some place a good few miles away, and she and Lena wanted me to check it out with them to see what was there. I told them in no uncertain terms that was not going to happen. Clara insisted that it was all fake and that this was probably some kind of marketing stunt or game. Some kind of online scavenger hunt. Just some weird, creepy bit of fun that someone had cooked up to promote a new horror movie or something. That would be a laugh. I told her that I wanted nothing to do with any of this anymore, and that if she and Lena wanted to go play Nancy Drew, that was up to them. But I told them I had a bad feeling about this whole thing and that they'd be better off forgetting all about it. It will probably come as no surprise that they did the exact opposite. I got a phone call from Clara about a week later, sounding like she was in hysterics. I asked her where she was, and she gave me the address for some crappy motel where she and Lena were apparently staying at right now. I headed over there, not sure what I would find or what the hell had happened. It turned out that Lena and Clara had done just about the stupidest thing they possibly could. They'd gone to that address. You know when you're watching a horror movie and you're screaming at the screen for those idiots to just run and not make the obviously horrible decision they're making? Imagine having people like that as friends, and you'll maybe see why this latest bit of stupid from these two didn't surprise me. Maybe I'm being overly harsh, but when I think back on this, I still get so damn angry. They could have been killed or God knows what else. As it was, the two of them were white as sheets and looked utterly terrified. They said it was an old house, front lawn overgrown with weeds and grass at the end of some dull little slice of suburbia. The door hadn't been locked, and they'd gone inside. I listened to their story as I scrolled through the pictures they'd snapped of this place. The inside of it had no carpeting, all of it having seemingly been torn up. The walls were filthy, and there was a horrible smell filling the house, they said, which they soon learned was coming from the kitchen. Filthy pots, pans, and plates were literally everywhere, and some still had half-eaten, rotting lumps of food on them, mold overrunning most of the cups and glasses. The living room had been just as grim. I saw pictures of a couch covered in a variety of unpleasant-looking stains, filth and grime covering the old wood floorboards. Across the wall, someone had scrawled, "For a worthy crowd," and beneath that was an old TV set with the screen kicked in. A bunch of tapes were all over the place, and they'd snapped pics of those too. They looked like tapes of a TV show, I guess, something called Sunshine Way. They'd gone upstairs, and the weird factor had gone right off the charts. The first bedroom they'd come across had been like something a mental patient would call home. No mattress on the bed, just a rusty old wire bed frame with a couple of pillows tossed on it and what looked like hooks dangling from the ceiling. Big, thick, rusty hooks with what they were pretty damn sure was dried blood on them, and what looked like a pool of it beneath that wire frame bed. But the walls were what really made me shiver. Someone had written "for a worthy crowd" on them. All four of them. The same words repeated over and over again. Rows upon rows of text with the same 4 words repeated again and again. Sometimes big, sometimes small, sometimes with no gaps in between them. The next room they tried had looked like it might have belonged to a kid at first. Bright, cartoony wallpaper and a few scattered and broken toys on the floor. Lena said she'd picked up a Barbie she'd found lying on the ground, only to drop it pretty quickly when she turned it over and found out that its entire front was covered in thick, old blood. Holes had been punched where the eyes should be. That big, cartoony, frowning face had been painted on the wall. The words "for a worthy crowd" were written underneath it again. But that wasn't what made them turn and run. What had made them turn and run was when they'd come to the third room. When they'd pushed open the door and felt an awful stench hit them. When they'd recognized it as the Red Room from MystikShow's first video. When they'd realized the source. It wasn't paint on the walls, floor, and ceiling. They ran and didn't stop running until they were in the car and breaking every single speed limit to get as far away from that house as they possibly could. They didn't have any pictures of the Red Room, so I only have their word for that last part. But the way they looked when they told me about it, I don't think they were lying. And the fact that they were with me when we filed a police report about the whole thing makes me think that they weren't making the rest up either. Of course I could be wrong. The whole thing could be an elaborate practical joke. Their little attempt to scare me. I'd certainly find it a lot more comforting to think that it was that they made up MystikShow, that it was just them and a few friends trying to give me a good fright. If it was, they certainly succeeded. I tried Googling Silent Frame Studios once or twice and got nothing back that seemed relevant. When I tried to go back on the site, it was gone. I've just got an error message. I've never been able to find any movies made by Silent Frame Studios, though from what I've seen, they probably don't make the kind of films that play at the local cinema. None of us felt like playing detective here after this, not even the pair of idiots I have for friends. What they'd seen had put them off delving any deeper down this rabbit hole, and I am deeply thankful for that. The police never contacted us to ask any follow-up questions, and I've never tried to talk to them about it. So I have no idea if that house was real, what they might have found there, or what happened next. If any of you feel like looking further into this, I can't stop you. Hell, this might have encouraged some of you, and if that's the case, I'm sorry for that. Because having seen the look on Clara and Lena's faces in that motel room, and looked at some of the photos they took in this place, I gotta say, when it comes to whatever this is, I think ignorance is bliss. The Dust Beneath. My name is Lena. My sister Lana and I are identical twins and spend most of our time together. Outwardly, we look the same. Same shoulder-length brown hair, same large brown eyes, same pale skin, same thin 5'8" builds. Inside, though, we're a bit different. She's the outgoing, friendly type that gets along with everyone. Me, I'm the awkward one that can't figure out how to keep a conversation going and gets nervous around strangers. Lucky for me, I have Lana. You could say that she is my hero, and I hope to be more like her someday. This might explain why I embrace the twin stereotype of our dressing alike most of the time. It's only ever a problem when one of us meets a boy we like. When this happens, we have a signal. 2 small taps on the elbow where nobody can see. If one of us taps the other on the elbow, that means, I think he's cute. Give us some private time. Her idea, of course. Thanks to this little system, my sister has had several boyfriends over the years, and I've had 1 or 2. Lana dates sporty athletic types. I date broody insecure types, but neither one of us ever takes these relationships very seriously. At least, we didn't until Ash. Our whole lives we had talked about our careers. We were both so driven. We had planned to graduate art college, rent a studio apartment, and create for a few years to see if we could get a reputation going as world-famous artist twins. We had saved every penny through high school to make it happen and give ourselves as much of an opportunity to break out as possible when the time came. It was a dream we had shared since I can remember. But then we met him. It was our first year of art college on a sunny day, and he was creating a chalk sketch of a huge tree on the walkway between Building A and the concourse building. The roots curled around the metal benches, as if holding on to them with a firm grip, and the branches extended up and out towards the parking lot like giant fingers. It was a massive, impressive sight. Like a few others, we stopped to watch him work. His jeans and hands were covered in chalk dust, but he had managed to keep his tweed vest and the purple button-down shirt clean. His sharp, angular features looked quite handsome, although they were often obscured by his longish hairstyle that he kept having to shake out of his vision. A pair of glasses hid his eyes. Those glasses were weird. I mean, they were just regular glasses, but it seemed like no matter which angle he was at, there was a strong glare hiding his eyes. I think it was those glasses that kept me from tapping my sister's elbow. Even though when I felt 2 little taps on mine, I felt a little jealous that she had called it. I mean, let's face it, he looked pretty hot. That day, I left Lana to meet Ash. Everybody called him that. He was a first year like us, and was known for sketching out chalk drawings around the college grounds and random other spots around town. I never did find out his real name, and I don't think I ever met anyone who did. Once, Lana said, "Oh, he likes to keep his true name a secret, and I'm not allowed to tell anyone. It's really exotic and beautiful, just like him, but I kind of like that it's a secret. It gives us something special between us, you know? I wish I had listened to my gut and warned my sister that something wasn't quite right. But how could I know?" In the weeks that followed, Lana would go out regularly to visit Ash wherever he lived, and I focused on art history and improving my brush technique. I didn't think anything of it at first. I was absorbed in my studies, determined to make a serious mark on the world as an artist, and she had never been the most studious type in the first place. Still, as the weeks and months passed, I started to develop a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She had never spent this much time with a boy before, and we weren't spending nearly as much time together as we had our entire lives. I try to brush it off as just one of those things, a part of growing up, but still, there was something a little unsettling about the relationship. It's hard to describe. Early on, she'd say, "Lena will catch up later. I've got a date with Ash tonight." Then it became, "Sorry, I've got to go see Ash." Then, "Going out, sis." Lately, she didn't even bother saying goodbye. Every day, she'd just take off to go see him. He never came over to our place. Things came to a head one Thursday night when we were doing our traditional sister time activity, drinking wine and watching True Blood. It was the one tradition we still managed to maintain. We were just chatting after the show, having to actually catch up on what was going on in our lives. I told her about what I was working on, which courses I was thinking about taking next term, that kind of thing. No boys and no parties recently. The truth is, without Lana around, I was just a bit too shy to go out and make new friends. When I asked her about what was going on, she could only talk about Ash, as usual. It was really starting to get on my nerves. He seemed to be the only thing she could talk about. A part of me started to hate him, and I admit that it was jealousy, but it was something else as well. I started to hate him for what he was doing to my sister. She was getting kind of obsessed. Lana always seemed to avoid specifics. She would talk about how he made her feel, the kinds of things he would say, the incredible pictures he was drawing, on and on and on. But if I ever asked her about an actual date they had gone on, or what kind of place he lived in, or even something as basic as if they had slept together or not, she'd get this far-off look in her eyes and say something like, "Come on, Lena, there are more important things." Tonight was no different. He's so spiritual, you know? When we're together, he talks about how he draws energy from the environment and from people, and how we all feed on one another in some form or other. And he's so right. He's so right. Okay, enough about the boyfriend. You get that assignment for classics done. Which one? You know, the big one that's worth 40% of your grade that's due in a week. Oh, that? No, not really. There are more important things, sis. Up until this point, I had assumed she was finding time somewhere to get her work done, but this was news. She had never flunked a course in her life, and classics had been one of her favorites. So what, you're just ditching it? I don't know. All I really know is how Ash has been making me feel lately. Did you see the work he did on the eastern wall of Building A? It was this beautiful scene, half city street and half forest with deer and rabbits, and whoa, time out. Lana, you're going to fail if you don't get the assignment in. You're okay with that. She just shrugged and sipped at her wine. So, you're what, going to drop out? I haven't given it much thought, sis. There are more important things. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Everything we had worked for our entire lives was right here, and she thought there were more important things. I couldn't believe my ears. In the past, my sister was always good at reading me. I could hide my emotions from anyone but her. At this point, though, I wasn't being subtle. I was almost yelling. I could feel my cheeks reddening and was obviously upset. She just looked at me with this easy, relaxed expression that hinted distantly of pity. You just don't understand, sis. It's something greater than all of that. Ash was just saying the other day. Fuck Ash. Did you forget our dream? You're throwing it all away. I was screaming. I've never screamed at my sister in my entire life, but this was too much. It was like she was in a trance or something, and I had to try to get through somehow. She just sighed, put the wine glass down on the table, and stood up. He said this day would come, that people wouldn't understand our bond, our love, our special energy. Lena, I'm going to give you some time to calm down. Maybe you'll see things differently in the morning. Lana walked toward the door and started putting her shoes on. Where are you going? You're in your pajamas. There are more important things. This was crazy. She was clearly brainwashed or hypnotized or something. Anger gave way to fear now. My sister was in danger, and it might even be too late. This guy had reached into her and stripped out the person I've known all my life and left this weird shell. I leapt up off the couch, dropping my wine glass on the way, and slapped her in the face as hard as I could as she reached for the doorknob. She just looked at me with this distant, slightly pitying smile. I screamed. "Wake up!" She moved toward the door again. I blocked her, talking all the while. "Lana, he's messing with your head. Don't you see? You're throwing everything away for some guy. It doesn't make any sense. Why are you?" And then she shoved me. Hard. Harder than I knew she could. When I hit the floor, I was a good 5 feet away, and pain shot down my leg and up through my hips and back. Never once in our entire lives did we ever hit or scratch or even push each other. Now she had just thrown me to the floor and was looking at me with that same distant little smile as if she didn't even care. "See you around, sis," she said. Part of me was still in shock, and the other part was just too sore to move, so I just sat there on the floor and watched as she walked out the door. She had left her keys, her cell phone, her purse, just walked out in her PJs and shoes. What has happened? After a minute, I snapped out of it, pulled on some clothes, and went out to look for her. I limped around the dorm, a bruise swelling up along the back of my left thigh. She wasn't in the common room or cafeteria, and I sort of assumed she had gone out somewhere to meet up with Ash. It was only then that it hit me. I had never known where Ash lived. My sister was out there with some guy whose name I didn't know, who had absolute control over her, and I had absolutely no idea where she was. Some sister I am. The only thing I could do was go to the places I knew he tended to do his drawings, but I didn't have much hope. It was dark out, and a light rain chilled me to the bone. The tree was mostly washed away, but a ghostly hint of the design could still be made out. It looked more like some weird squid now, with hooks clamping around the benches and tentacles reaching out into the parking lot. I checked the eastern wall of Building A, but they weren't there either. As the chalk on the mural had started to run, the scene had transformed. What was once a bright and bustling cityscape on the left had turned brown and drab, with people's faces on the sidewalks sagging and melting. Their eyes bulged from their faces, and their mouths twisted into grimaces. I almost turned away, but then something occurred to me. Chalk doesn't really work that way. If it was running, it would just fade and become blurry. This was different. It was as if the image was transforming into something else intentionally. My gut churned with fear as I turned to examine the image more closely. The horror of what was being slowly revealed by the rain began to dawn on me now, and I realized that there was no possible way this was accidental. Whatever was happening, there was a dark design behind it. A purpose. The cars were turning to rust, the windows breaking and sagging. One of the buildings near the middle had actually crumbled, and inside there were people screaming, stuck in the rubble, with arms and legs trapped and bleeding. Their expressions were so real and lifelike, filled with agony and despair. I shivered against the cold and held myself, trying to convince myself that it was just a picture, but I couldn't help but feel scared. This was just wrong. The forest scene on the right side was the same. What was once a happy green scene with cute animals had turned dark and brown, with the leaves looking dead and rotten, branches standing out like bony fingers, and the animals all transformed. The deer was still standing, but parts of its flesh were gone, revealing half the skull and several ribs. Its entrails were dragging behind several feet. What had once been a cute bunny was now a rotten corpse with little black specks over its flies. Suddenly, my sister's cell phone rang in my pocket. I jumped, startled by the sound. I guess I grabbed hers by accident when I left. We bought the same model. The call display said simply, "Ash." My hand shook as I pressed the answer button. I held the phone to my ear and listened at first, hoping for some clue as to my sister's whereabouts. Lana's voice said, "Western Wall, sis." It was her. I felt a bit of relief and realized that a part of me had been dreading that something horrible had happened to her. "Lana, you scared the shit out of me. Come home, okay? I'm sorry for the fight. We'll figure it out. I love you, just Western Wall, sis." It was exactly the same as last time, a bit muffled, with a slight hiss in the background as she spoke. It was like a recording. The line went dead. Fear slammed through me with a shot of adrenaline, and I took off around Building A. Even now, I can't tell you what it was that scared me so much, but my heart was pounding in my chest, and I knew with absolute certainty that something was wrong. I had to find her now. Running along the north wall was the longest run of my life. Rain pelted down on my aching bones, and the bruising in my left leg gave me a crazy limp, slowing me down. Eventually, I rounded the corner, expecting to see Lana or Ash or both, but nothing. Nobody was there. I walked forward, dragging my left foot a bit, shivering worse than ever. There was no sign of them, but after traveling a few feet, I saw that a new chalk drawing had appeared on the wall. It was our living room. My sister was still in the same pajamas I had just seen her in, and she was sitting on the couch with her head tilted to the side. Her stomach had been torn out and was splattered across the floor at her feet. Her expression was a combination of horror, pain, and confusion. My stomach turned then, and I collapsed onto the sidewalk. I vomited up the wine from earlier and cried, knowing that this wasn't just an image. I didn't want to look anymore and just stared at the mess I had left, slowly being rinsed away by the rain. Just then I heard a shuffling and looked back up in the wall. A life-size rendering of Ash was now standing at the bottom of the frame, looking out at the world, smiling. His glasses were reflecting the light, hiding his eyes, as usual. He had a large butcher knife in his right hand, and blood coated the knife and arm up to the elbow. Next to him, I was standing with my right hand on his shoulder, my left hand held out in a beckoning gesture, and a smile on my face. What was this? What did it mean? In my terror and pain, I couldn't make sense of it. But I did know one thing. I had to get back home. This could mean something. It might be a clue back at home about where my sister was and whether she really was dead or alive. I got home as best I could, every bone aching from the chill and the shock. I would change, call campus security, and convince them to help search for her. When I walked in, I closed the door behind me, tossed my keys on the table, and confirmed that my sister wasn't gutted on our couch. I turned and the bedroom door opened. Ash was standing in the doorway, smiling. He had the knife in his hand. It gleamed like his glasses, reflecting light from a source I couldn't quite see. I was too terrified to move. My heart was pounding in my chest again. I stammered out, "Where's Lana?" He just smiled and stepped aside slightly. Then, much to my relief, Lana stepped out of the bedroom. She had changed into the same outfit I was wearing. She had the same smile on her face as Ash, the same one I had been wearing on the western wall of Building A. She turned away from me for a moment, took the knife from him, and pointed it at me. "Get your PJs and shoes on, Lena. We're going to make some art." You would think that being a cult investigator would be so exciting that I couldn't get bored. The problem is that I get completely obsessed with something, learn everything about it, and when I figure there's nothing new to see, I lose all interest. It doesn't matter how freaky the subject is or how dangerous. There comes a point where I get the sense that I've seen it all, done it all, and it's time to move on. Jason and that night at the warehouse changed all of that. I discovered that there was something I hadn't seen yet, and it was bigger than I could have imagined. In my defense, though, nothing could have prepared me for this. When I first got hooked on the dark and dangerous world of cults, my mom completely freaked. "Jason," she said, "you'll just end up shaving your head, selling everything you own, giving all the money to some degenerate, and then you'll kill yourself so that you can join the mothership or something." Later I found out that, as crazy as that sounds, people really do that. They do it every day, all over the world. There is some serious brainwashing going on out there. I didn't want to worry my mom, but I was just too fascinated. The strangeness of seemingly normal people randomly tossing their lives out the window was just too much to resist. I told her that the surest way to make sure I never became a victim was to learn everything I could about the subject. Eventually, she grudgingly agreed to let me take a few courses. If the courses had been good, I might have been satisfied and moved on, but they were a total bust. Documentation on this stuff is pretty sketchy and usually takes the form of dry police reports or glossy made-for-TV documentaries that skip most of the details. It's all pretty surface level and doesn't explain how or why any of these people do what they do. Eventually, I decided to dive in and do my own research. I got good at hunting people down who were currently or had been in cults, as well as family members of people who had joined cults and disappeared forever. When I found them, I interviewed them and eventually had enough material to start writing books about it. I was never really popular, but I hacked out a modest living. At first it was great, but I've got to be honest, it's just the same old story every time. Some guy looks for people who are insecure. They're easy to find. They're everywhere. He tells them that not only are they special, but that he has the secrets to unlock what's special about them. He tosses out a bunch of pop philosophy that he read out of a magazine to get them thinking that it might be true, and they start believing in him in the hopes that he can make the world a less intimidating place. Then they're welcomed into the group with open and loving arms, and it's all chanting and social pressure. They start getting social validation and encouragement every time they obey orders without question and voice their agreement with the leader. If they disobey or question the leader, well, maybe they're not such a great person after all. The group turns against them until they fall in line. And when you've been insecure your whole life and finally find a group of people that accept you, you fall in line real quick. To seal the deal, they're encouraged to avoid contact with outsiders so they don't get contaminated. The group becomes their whole universe, and nothing makes sense outside of it. Then you just mix in a little group hypnosis, a low-protein diet, the occasional drug-induced mystical experience, and voila, you've got yourself a brainwash cult. I'd start one myself, but damn it, I'm just not depraved enough yet. Maybe someday. I had seen it so often that it had gotten boring, but then I met Marissa. Now, I know that it's a horrible cliche having your mother call you up out of the blue to set you up on a blind date. Her friend's cousin's daughter has a great personality. It's an old story, but that's Ma for ya, a true classic. Truth is, I love her for it. And considering how long it had been since I had a date at all, I was open to seeing anyone even if their personality weighed 100 pounds more than I do. So you can imagine my surprise when I met Marissa. She was a stunner. A tight 5'3" package with long black hair that shimmered and flowed past her shoulder blades as she moved. The killing blow were her dark eyes. They looked right into you. There was something about the way she moved, the way she smiled, and the easy way she laughed. This was a woman that was confident, had herself together, and was enjoying the hell out of life. The effect is more seductive than anything you can imagine. Trust me. She was way out of my league. I mean, I'm not ugly, but I'm not the kind of guy anyone would pick out a crowd. Average guys don't get these 10 out of 10 girls. So, when I met her, I figured it would be our first and last date. You can imagine my surprise when, at the end of the night, as I was dropping her off, she stopped mid-sentence and kissed me. "Sorry to kiss you out of the blue like that," she said. "It's okay. You can kiss me like that anytime you want," I said. We went on a few dates, and things went well. She laughed at my jokes and ignored the drooling stares other men gave her. She was witty too, always with a quick turn of phrase or clever observation. Her sharp features and pale skin went well with her dark hair and eyes, and that stare she'd give me sometimes just melted me to the core. She recently quit her job as a lawyer and was trying her hand as an artist. When I asked her why, she just said, "There are more important things, you know?" Still, the better things went, the more doubt built. I just had to know, why was she bothering with someone like me? Eventually, I just decided to put her on the spot. We were walking home one night after a few drinks and stopped on a footbridge over the highway just to watch the streams of cars come and go. It was just something to do to pass the time, and she was funny like that. She never really needed entertainment. I swear we could be staring at a brick wall, and she'd be just as content as long as we were together. After a while, I asked, "Seriously, why are you dating me?" She laughed. "You're a great guy, Jason. Why wouldn't I be?" "No. Seriously, I mean, why did you agree to go out on a date with a stranger you had never met anyway? You must have guys falling all over themselves trying to get your attention." "Well, sure, but I don't know. For the first time I saw her hesitate and look away, holding something back. I knew I was onto something. Was it a bad relationship or something? No, my relationships have been fine." "Well, do you have some dark secret? Like a criminal record? Where you're an asylum escapee? Where you're really a dude? She laughed and said, No, I'm fine, and I'm all woman for your information. I think I must have shown some visible relief because she laughed again. I guess I had been pretty worried that she was going to turn out to be a cannibal, or worse, a man. Well then, do you just go out on every blind date that your mom sets you up with? No, I never do. So then why did you agree to go out with me? I had her then. She bit her lip and looked down at her feet. I waited. Well, I heard you wrote about cults. Oh, you've read my books? No. Well, I mean, yes, I picked them up after our first date, but that wasn't why. She just trailed off there, still looking down and avoiding eye contact. Something was really bothering her, but I couldn't figure out what. I've interviewed dozens of people involved in cults, possibly hundreds, but this wasn't the typical level of anxiety or sadness people usually wore on their faces when talking about this stuff. This was more just concentration, like she was just trying to get the words right. She had never been tongue-tied before. She still had too much of that lawyer in her. I decided to give her a little time to come around to it and watch the stream of headlights below us. I know someone, Jason. Someone you really need to meet. Oh no, not this. I know this speech. She continued. Look, before I go on, I need you to trust me that he isn't a cult leader. He doesn't manipulate anyone or keep anyone from contacting the outside world, and doesn't even ask for money. He's just... I had meant to let her finish, I really did, but anger got the best of me. Are you serious? Are you really being serious right now? Every single person who has ever been in a cult has sworn that it wasn't a cult. That's how they all work. They don't ask for anything and have this big outer layer where everyone comes and goes. But once you're accepted into the inner circle, then everything changes and it's goodbye bank account. Hello, poison Kool-Aid. Jason, will you please? Please just let me explain. Please, can I just have the floor for 5 minutes? Her eyes were pleading. I couldn't say no to them, so I put my hands on the railing and stared out at the line of red tail lights, grinding my teeth. Okay, first a quick yes or no question. Had you ever heard of a guy called Ash? I shook my head. All right, there's a reason for that. Ash isn't a fake prophet come to get people's money. He's the real deal, Jason. Not exactly a messenger from God or anything, but you would not believe the clarity he brings to your mind. I wanted to tell her that that's why they call it brainwashing, but I bit my tongue. She had over 4 minutes left. For example, would you believe I used to be shy? I mean, crushingly shy, like I wouldn't talk to anyone. It made my job as a lawyer really, really tough, and with his help I was able to become so much better at what I did. I got so good, but in the end, I realized I just didn't need it anymore to prove that I'm worthwhile. There are more important things. And you know what Ash said to that? He agreed and recommended I take some time out to find what I'd like to do instead. Now, I ask you, if he was some kind of power-hungry cult leader, wouldn't he have wanted me to stay a lawyer to look out for his best interests? I had to admit, she was making a good point, but it could have either been a stupid rookie mistake or an advanced long-term play on his part. It didn't really change anything. The reason I decided to date you was because of something he said once. He said that one day he would love to meet someone who was an expert in cults so that they could judge him. He would answer their questions fully, go on record, and let them decide for themselves. So I thought. She thought what? I lost my composure as the realization hit me. Oh my God, that's even worse. So you're saying you're dating me to recruit me? No, I'm not explaining this. Marissa, let's go meet him. Right now. What? She looked surprised. The fact was that I was furious, and someone was going to pay. This bastard, whoever he is, reached out to me through this amazing woman and toyed with my emotions. I wasn't going to let that slide. I had my handy Olympus digital voice recorder in my pocket that I carried around for interviews, and I was going to put this cult leader on YouTube for everyone to hear, with my commentary picking him apart, of course. And if I happened to find an opportunity to break the guy's nose when I was done, so much the better. Despite it being around 11 at night, Marissa said that Ash should be available. We caught a cab, and she gave the driver directions to a warehouse down by the pier. In the cab, Marissa seemed to suddenly transform. She had been understandably upset on the bridge and flustered that I had caught her in her little manipulative scheme, but that all changed now. She let out a long, satisfied sigh and leaned back in her seat, looking out the window and ignoring me. There was a small smile that played on her lips, almost like she had won something, like she had beaten me. My sense of humiliation grew, and I just got angrier as I became more and more convinced that she had played me every single step of the way. Were any of the things she told me true? Was the whole shy, thoughtful moment on the bridge just a big put-on to bait the hook? Was she really in control of the conversation the whole time, just pushing my buttons, provoking me into reacting? It didn't matter. I was going to meet this Ash and expose her little god for the pathetic, fraudulent degenerate he was. Then we'd see if the little bitch smiles so smugly. When we got there, we entered through an unlocked door that faced the street. It was dark inside, with only a few lights on inside the warehouse illuminating the center of the room. A man was on his hands and knees in the open space, creating a complex pattern on the floor about 50 feet wide, filled with arcane symbols and various languages. A young woman met us at the door. "Hi, is this Jason?" I wasn't surprised that Marissa had told him about me. It is a cult, after all. In the dim light, I could see that she was a young woman, maybe a college student, and her expression didn't give a hint of a threat. Still, I've seen that before in some real psychos, and considering how much of a fraud Marissa was turning out to be, I wasn't about to let my guard down towards her. When neither of us spoke, she smiled warmly and extended a hand. "I'm Lana. Welcome. You've been expected. From what I've heard, you're probably pretty pissed right now, aren't you?" Her expression implied that there was a joke in there somewhere, but not knowing what else to do, I decided to grit my teeth and stick to my manners. Show no weakness. I shook her hand. "Hi, Lana. Well, I'm just a little confused, let's say. Can I talk with Ash?" "Of course, go right ahead," she said. She waved me towards the man in the center of the room. I took a few steps before I realized that Marissa wasn't following. I turned around and she just stared at me blankly. Of course, she wasn't following. She had done her job and delivered me to her leader, so that was it. There was no reason for her to bother with me anymore. I should have just kept walking, but I couldn't stop myself. What kind of bitch does something like this? Dates a guy and plays him for weeks just to set up some meeting. I understand, but there are more important things. "Ash will explain," said Marissa. "Ash will explain. Go now." "He's waiting," said Lana. I wanted to scream at her, to hit her, to make her feel some of the anger and pain that was boiling inside of me. But it hit me. This is the lion's den, and I'm going in completely unprepared. In fact, now that I had the chance to think about it, this is not the way I do things at all. When doing interviews for my work, I would usually have left a message with a friend about who I was meeting, where I was going, and how long to wait until calling the police if they don't hear from me. I would have also written a note with the same information and left it on my desk for any investigating officers to discover later. I would have also definitely been going under an assumed name. Tonight, I don't think I even mentioned to anyone that I was going on another date with Marissa, and I could feel eyes in the dark corners of the room watching. I bit my tongue, turned around, and walked on. The danger of the situation meant I had to try to bottle these emotions and keep my cool. I admit, I wasn't finding it easy. I promised myself that I would make the bitch hear me, though, sooner or later. The man in the center of the room looked like he was just finishing up his work, putting the finishing touches on the design in the middle. He stood up and dusted off his jeans. When he looked up at me, he shook his hair from his face and simply waited for me to join him. He had angular facial features, a wide smile, and wore a tweed vest over a purple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. As I passed over the patterns, I began to notice some distant similarities between some of the symbols in occult texts, such as the Lesser Key of Solomon, as well as a few Egyptian hieroglyph references, but for the most part they were a language and art style I had never seen. Either he had pulled from some pretty obscure source material for his holy scribbling, or it was just art made to look like language. Even if it was nonsense, one thing was definitely true. There was something gorgeous about it. The characters, if that's what they were, seemed to have a compelling flow to them, a churning that pulled at the concrete they were drawn on. It was just chalk on a warehouse floor, but somehow it really did seem like magic. It was almost like there was a humming or some kind of vibration coming from the patterns as I stepped on them. The skeptical side of me was screaming to ignore stupid, fanciful thoughts like these. I bit my cheek on purpose, then, hard, focusing on the pain, focusing on my anger, and looking away from the swirling patterns on the floor. The man in front of me was my objective. Focus on him. When I was just a few feet away, I stopped. "You Ash." He nodded, but said nothing. He had a pair of glasses on that were reflecting the light, so I couldn't see his eyes. "So, you wanted to speak with me, right? You know you could have just called, instead of sending someone to trick me into coming. I don't like being played." He didn't flinch or speak or even raise an eyebrow. He just stood there, smiling. A part of me found his calm stillness in the face of my aggression unnerving, but I wasn't going to give in. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, buddy. I don't get intimidated that easy." I pulled out the Olympus and said, "I'll be recording this. You don't mind, do you? Oh, please object. Please give me a reason to start arguing with you." He slowly shook his head once. "Fine. Now if I could get him to speak. So how long has your little group been in operation?" I waited, but silence. "No." "Okay, well, how big is it then? What's it called?" Again, silence. It was making me feel uneasy and a bit paranoid. Why was he just staring at me? Was I missing something? Is he setting me up for something? "Look, I was told that you wanted to be judged, that you were going to give complete answers. How am I going to get these answers unless you start talking?" "You haven't asked the right questions," he said. His voice was difficult to describe. I'd say it was like wind through the leaves in autumn or the babbling of a brook, but to be honest, I can't quite call it up in my mind. It was a human voice, though. I'm certain of that. I'm certain. I stood there thinking for a while, trying to work out how to navigate this man. He was like a statue of a person rather than a living being. I couldn't even see him breathing. I had ventured beyond the world of generic degenerates and into some real psycho territory. Well, if he's a cult leader, he'll only really be interested in spreading his little twist on philosophy and holy doctrine. If the preacher wants to preach, then let him preach. What is it that you've been teaching people? Do you want me to tell you? Or do you want to know? It only took me a few moments to realize that his question was a trap. Word games like this almost always are. And if a cult leader asks you an either slash or question, you can be sure you're being manipulated. Now it's just a matter of working it out to use it against him. So, if I choose, I just want you to tell me he'll say something like, "Well, if you aren't going to try to understand what I tell you, why bother?" Classic dodge. If I say, "I want to know," then he'll tell me about the long, long journey ahead in order to truly comprehend his teachings. That way he can drag it out over months, giving me tiny bits of his holy doctrine each time and promising me more in the future, all the while making me participate in ritual after ritual to break me down. Either way, he doesn't want to give a simple answer to a simple question. I decide to stick to my guns. I want to know, but I want to know right now. Tonight. Within the next hour, ideally. He smiled a little more broadly and said, "Your offer is accepted." He took off his glasses and the world went black. Gravity is gone, and just like that, I understand everything in existence. It hurts, of course. Hurts like hell. Hurts like someone is reaching into my skull from 1,000 different angles, piercing my skin and hacking away chunks of bone. The cerebellum goes first. A smooth chop just up beneath the base of the skull. Just like that, I no longer have any sense of what it is to work a human body. I still feel it, though. I still suffer from it. I just have no notion of how to control it. 100 needles pierce the back of my head, destroying my concept of vision. The needles become drills, and they bore in further, killing my ability to speak, wiping out my ability to understand abstract concepts. Pain is left, however. Pain and confusion remain, overwhelming and all-encompassing. Knives stab up through my chin and sinuses and up into my temporal lobe. I can't remember who I am. Every record and memory stored in my brain is forever obliterated. There is no moment before now, nor is there one after now. I am the eternal essence of suffering and confusion. When the concussive force of the sledgehammer crushes the front of my skull, the confusion disappears. I am simply pain. I have always been pain. Agony is the universe in its entirety, and it is infinite and eternal. Then, out of the fabric of pain, a new concept is offered. There is a record of a man named Jason. I can use that record, pretend to be him, and escape this universe. I can exist on a whole new level of reality. My guide and savior will be Ash. He will bring me forth into this new plane of existence, one filled with thought and new feelings other than pain. Once there, I will help him exchange energy. It will be my infinite pleasure to do so, and in exchange, he will give me experience beyond my imaginings. He will show me how to puppeteer this body and how to operate the brain to make believe I'm a convincing person named Jason. I do not hesitate in my acceptance of the offer. As I am created anew by Ash, I'm told that he would normally complete this process without pain over the course of months. At first, I don't understand until he teaches me what months are and what it is to be without pain. The sheer wonder of it is beyond anything I was ever capable of imagining. To exist without constant, never-ending suffering is just incredible. Even this is merely a step on the road to something greater. A thing called death awaits me that will provide the promise of absolute oblivion. It will be here in just a few decades at most, barely a blink compared to the eternity I have anguished. My only disappointment is that I have such a tiny blink of time to serve my savior. When I am fully reborn, Ash is smiling at me, and I at him. I notice this body is still standing in a warehouse, holding Jason's recorder out. I hit stop on the recording and then delete it. It seems blasphemous to have a record of this moment beyond that which has been shared between us so intimately. How can I serve you? I ask him. Speech is a wonder. Breathing is a wonder. He points down at our feet. We have been standing on a beautiful image of Jason's mother. No, I must learn to say my mother. That is my mother on the kitchen floor, covered in blood, her head nearly but not quite severed from her body. That is Ash and I standing next to her. I know that I must make this art become reality. As we walk to the exit, there are two beings Jason thought he knew, Lana and Marissa. Those aren't their names, of course, just as Jason isn't mine. We are greater than that. We are servants of Ash. Other servants are also in the room, ones that Jason had only guessed at. They're standing in small groups, taking up residence in the shadows to watch our savior work his art on the floor. There are even more servants out there in the world, each with their own make-believe character to play. Although how many of them are out there, I cannot know. Jason would probably object to what we're going to do to my mom, but it's fine. I can do things that Jason wouldn't do, as long as those things are in the service of Ash. After all, there are more important things. Hi everyone, my name is Ash, and I'm really happy that you made it this far. Most people don't, but if you've read everything up until now, then it means that you're open-minded enough to hear the truth. That's more rare than you'd think. I know you've probably got a lot of questions, and I promise that most of them are going to be answered in the next few pages. There's a lot that you need to know, and I'm going to be open and honest about everything. First, you should know that the story you just read is not fiction. It's a collection of real events that happened to real people. Some names were changed, but I assure you that Jason existed. He came to me with a curious heart, and I did nothing more than open a door for him. He walked through it of his own free will, and he's very happy with the results. I know, I sound like a cult leader. Jason certainly thought so, and if you're like most people, then you probably agree with him. But before you rush to judge me, I'd like to tell you a little story. It's the story of the White King and the Black King. A long time ago, there was a world that was brand new and full of life. The world wasn't anything like our world because the world of this story was flat and made of a giant checkerboard that stretched on forever. The squares of the checkerboard were black and white and covered in a soft dust that made it look kind of like felt. You could even peel the squares back if you wanted to. There were only two creatures that lived in this world, and they were the White King and the Black King. They were very much alike in every way, except that one of them was white and the other was black. They were both very powerful, and they both wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to bring pieces to the board. Pieces were smaller creatures like you and me that moved around the board and had thoughts and feelings and ideas. When pieces moved around the board, they would leave trails behind them in the dust. Sometimes the trails were beautiful and sometimes they were terrible, but they were always different and interesting. The kings both agreed that they wanted as many pieces moving around the board as possible, and they wanted the pieces to go to as many different squares as possible so that there would be trails left behind on the whole board. This way, it wouldn't just be a blank checkerboard. It would be a history, a story. But the two kings couldn't decide on what kind of pieces to make. The White King wanted to make pieces that lived very short lives. They would be born, they would grow up, and then they would die. This way, he said, the pieces would move around the board very quickly and try lots of different things. The Black King didn't like this idea at all. He wanted to make pieces that lived forever. That way they could learn all the rules of the game and get really good at playing it. The two kings argued and argued for a long time. They didn't have mouths or voices, of course, but they argued by changing the shapes of the squares on the board and moving the dust around in patterns. Eventually, they decided that the only fair way to do it was to each make their own kind of piece and put them both on the board to see what would happen. The White King made a lot of pieces very quickly. He made them out of the white dust and gave them warm red hearts that pulsed with love and courage. The Black King took a very long time to make his pieces and only created a few. He made them out of the black dust and gave them cold blue hearts that pulsed with reason and patience. Then the two kings put their pieces on the board and watched. As the kings expected, the white pieces moved around very quickly and tried many different things. Some were successful and some were not, but they created trails all over the board. The black pieces took a long time to move, but when they did, they moved exactly the way they wanted to. They never made mistakes, but they never took risks either. They were able to live a long time and understand the world much better, but they left very few trails. The kings watched for many years, and eventually they both came to the same conclusion. The White King had been right. The black pieces were wise, but it was the white pieces that made the board beautiful. The Black King did not get angry or upset. He wasn't that kind of creature. He simply accepted that his experiment had failed. When his last piece was destroyed by accident, he simply looked at the empty square and did nothing. After a very long time, the Black King took off his crown and laid it on the square where the piece had died. He asked the White King to continue the game, and then he left the board forever. Now, if you've been reading carefully, then you've probably figured out that this story is really about something else. The checkerboard is the universe, and the two kings are God and the devil. Only here's the thing, it's not what you think. You probably thought that the White King was God and the Black King was the devil, right? I mean, that's the way the stories always go. The good guys were white and the bad guys were black. It's in every book and movie and cartoon you've ever seen. But it's not that simple. I want to tell you something that almost no one in the world knows. Are you ready? Here it is. The devil isn't evil. He just lost. That's all. He lost the great game, and now he doesn't play anymore. He stopped playing because he realized he was wrong. He realized that there was no value in preserving pieces forever. That the most wonderful part of the universe was the part where people take chances and make mistakes and try new things. He realized that the thing which makes the game beautiful is the dust, the trails, the record of what's been done, the past. He realized that it was better to be temporary and interesting than permanent and boring. And so he left the game because he didn't want to ruin it. He walked away, and now he lives out in the empty parts of the board where there are no squares and no dust. That's where I found him. You see, I'm not a king. I'm not a god or a devil or a creature from another world. I'm just a piece on the board, like you. But one day I walked too far and got lost, and I found him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. He wasn't anything. He was just sitting in the emptiness, remembering a game that he used to play a long time ago. I sat down with him, and we talked for a very long time. I told him that I understood why he left the game and that he made the right decision. But I also told him that there were pieces on the board who were getting scared. They didn't remember why they were playing anymore. They couldn't see the big picture. I told him that there were pieces who had forgotten how to move, and I asked him to help me. He told me that he couldn't go back to the game. He was too big, and his hands were too strong. But he told me that he could help me move a little better, that he could help me understand the rules a little more clearly, and that if I really wanted to, I could help the other pieces too. But he made me promise something first. He made me promise that I wouldn't try to control the other pieces, that I wouldn't try to cheat or win the game. He made me promise that I would never forget that the point of the game is the dust. I made that promise, and I've kept it. That's why I'm telling you all this now, because I'm not trying to recruit you or convert you or win you over. I'm not starting a cult or a religion. I'm just giving you a chance to remember the game, because we've been playing it for a long time now, and most of us have forgotten why. You're probably wondering how all this works. You're probably wondering how a piece on the board can talk to a king who doesn't play anymore. The answer is, it's hard. The universe isn't built for this kind of thing, and so we have to find ways to make it work. One of the things I've learned is that information and energy are basically the same thing. I know it doesn't seem like it, but they are. If you move information around in just the right way, it turns into energy. And if you have enough energy, you can move information in ways that are normally impossible. That's why writing is so powerful. Writing is information, but it's also energy. When you read something that makes you feel something, that's energy being transferred. When you read a story that makes your heart beat faster, that's your body converting information into energy. It's a beautiful thing, and it's what allows us to talk to him, the one who used to be the Black King. He doesn't have a name anymore, and he doesn't want one, but he still listens. He still watches the board from time to time, and he still remembers what it was like to play. When we create stories about real people doing real things, we make trails in the dust. We honor the game, and when we do that, he notices. He leans in a little closer, and he listens a little harder. And if we're very lucky, sometimes he answers. So here's the part where I give you a choice. Not a command, not a demand, just a choice. You can stop reading now and go on with your life, and that's totally fine. There's no penalty, no punishment, no judgment. You're free to walk away. But if you're curious, if you want to learn more, if you want to understand the rules a little more clearly, I'd like to invite you to help us. We're not a religion, and we're not a cult. We're just a group of people who are trying to play the game the right way. We call ourselves The Record, because that's what we're trying to make, a record of what's been done. We're trying to make trails in the dust. Some of us write stories. Some of us tell them. Some of us just live interesting lives and let the dust gather naturally. There's no membership list, no meetings, no rules. There's just the game and the promise. The promise is simple. Never forget the point of the game. Never forget that it's the dust that matters. That's all. If you can keep that promise, then you're one of us. Even if we never meet, even if we never speak, you'll still be one of us. And we'll be glad to have you. I know this has probably been a lot to take in. I know it probably sounds weird or crazy or even dangerous. And I know that there are people out there who will try to twist this into something it's not. They'll say that we're a cult or a religion or a group of lunatics trying to bring back the devil. But we're not doing any of those things. We're just playing the game. We're just leaving trails in the dust. And we're inviting you to do the same. If you made it this far, then I want to thank you. Not because you believe me or because you agree with me, but because you listened. That's more than most people ever do. And if you decide to join us, if you decide to help make the record, then I'll thank you for that too. But even if you don't, even if you walk away and never think about this again, I want you to remember one thing. Your life matters. Your story matters. Every step you take leaves a trail, and the trail is the point. Not the destination, not the reward, not the meaning or the message. Just the trail. That's what makes the game beautiful. That's what makes the game worth playing. So go play. Go live. Go leave a trail. We'll be watching. We'll be listening. We'll be here. Always. And when your story is over, when your trail has been walked, we'll make sure it's remembered. We'll make sure it's part of the record. Because every trail matters. Even yours. Especially yours.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.